This security camera caught something impossible. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about reality. Across the globe, surveillance cameras are recording things that shouldn't exist. Shadowy figures, translucent forms, movements that defy physics. But here's what makes these cases truly terrifying. Nobody sees these entities in real time. Only when the footage is reviewed do these apparitions reveal themselves. Tonight, I'm taking you through 3 documented cases where cameras captured what human eyes could not see.
Before continuing to watch the video, please subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Thank you for watching The Witch's Book, Dark Tales.
Story 1. The Hampton Court Ghost. Our first case takes us to Hampton Court Palace in London, one of England's most historic royal residences. Built in the early 1500s, this magnificent palace has witnessed centuries of drama, intrigue, and tragedy. It was here that King Henry VIII courted his wives, and here that some of them met their doom. On December 19, 2003, something happened that would thrust Hampton Court into the spotlight of paranormal investigation. James Fox was a security guard on the night shift. He'd worked at Hampton Court for 3 years and had grown accustomed to the creaks and groans of the ancient building. On this particular December evening, temperatures had dropped below freezing. The palace was closed to visitors, and James was making his rounds through the deserted galleries. At approximately 11:47 p.m., the alarm system registered an anomaly. Fire doors in Exhibition Room 1 had been opened. This wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. These doors were heavy, requiring significant force to push open, and they were equipped with magnetic locks that could only be released from the security control room or triggered by fire alarms. James checked his monitors. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No indication of system malfunction. He radioed his colleague Martin, who was stationed at the main entrance. Exhibition Room 1. Fire doors just opened. I'm checking it out. Want backup? Martin's voice crackled through the radio. Nah, probably just a glitch. Meet me there in 5 if I don't radio back. James made his way through the darkened corridors, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. Hampton Court at night was an eerie place, even for someone who'd worked there for years. When James arrived at Exhibition Room 1, the fire doors were indeed open, swaying slightly as cold air rushed through the gap. He approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. As he reached the doors, they suddenly slammed shut with tremendous force. The sound echoed through the empty gallery like a gunshot. James jumped back, his heart pounding. "What the hell?" he muttered, trying to steady his breathing. He examined the doors. They were firmly closed, the magnetic locks engaged. He tested them. They wouldn't budge without the security override. Over the next 45 minutes, the fire doors opened and closed 3 more times. Each time, James was nearby. Each time, he saw nothing that could explain the phenomenon. No drafts strong enough to move those heavy doors. No mechanical failure that would cause them to release and re-engage randomly. The next morning, James and the security supervisor, Victoria Walsh, reviewed the CCTV footage. What they saw defied explanation. At 11:47 p.m., the camera positioned near the fire doors captured something extraordinary. The doors began to open slowly, deliberately. And there, pushing them open, was a figure. But not just any figure. The security camera had recorded a tall man in what appeared to be period clothing. A long robe or cloak, distinctly Tudor in style. "Pause it there," Victoria said, leaning closer to the monitor. Is that a costume?" James shook his head. "There was nobody there, Victoria. I was there within 90 seconds. The place was empty." They watched as the figure pushed the doors fully open, then turned. For just a moment, the camera captured what might have been a face, pale and indistinct, before the figure retreated back through the doorway and vanished. The footage from the second incident was even more dramatic. This time, the figure was fully visible for nearly 8 seconds. It moved with purpose, striding through the doorway before the doors slammed shut. The quality was clear enough to make out details. The flowing robe, the tall stature, what appeared to be period footwear. Hampton Court Palace made a decision that was unprecedented for a British royal residence. They released the footage to the public. Within days, it had been viewed millions of times. The media dubbed it the Hampton Court Ghost, and it became one of the most famous pieces of paranormal footage ever recorded. Skeptics immediately offered explanations. It was a hoax. It was an employee in costume. It was a trick of light and shadow. But palace officials stood by the authenticity of the footage. No employees were in costume that night. The building was locked down. Most importantly, multiple cameras from different angles showed the same phenomenon. Dr. Richard Wiseman, a psychologist from the University of Hertfordshire, was invited to investigate. He brought specialized equipment to measure electromagnetic fields, temperature variations, and air pressure changes. His team spent 3 nights in Exhibition Room 1. What's fascinating about this case, Dr. Wiseman explained in his report, is the convergence of eyewitness testimony and video evidence. Security guard James Fox experienced the doors opening and closing repeatedly. The CCTV captured what appears to be a figure. The timing matches perfectly. But Dr. Wiseman also noted something crucial. Cameras see differently than human eyes. They're sensitive to infrared light, which is invisible to us. They process motion differently. They capture the full spectrum of what's in front of them without the filtering that our brains perform. Researchers began digging into Hampton Court's history, looking for possible connections. The area where the sighting occurred was near the state apartments, rooms that had once been used by King Henry VIII. A historian named Dr. Eleanor Hayes spent weeks in the palace archives. She discovered something intriguing. The fire doors were located almost exactly where a private entrance to the king's apartments would have been in the 1530s. If you were a courtier summoned to see the king, she explained, this is likely the route you would have taken. The modern fire doors occupy the same space as what was once a crucial passageway. To this day, the Hampton Court ghost remains unexplained. The palace has experienced other anomalies over the years. Visitors report feeling sudden cold spots. Cameras occasionally malfunction in specific areas. Some visitors claim to have photographed strange mists or shadows that weren't visible when they took the picture. James Fox, the security guard who first witnessed the phenomenon, left Hampton Court Palace 6 months after the incident. In a rare interview, he said, "I'm not a believer in ghosts, or at least I wasn't. But I know what I experienced that night. The cameras didn't lie. They showed what I couldn't see but somehow felt. There was something there with me. Something that existed in a way I can't explain." Story 2. The Night Shift Nurse. Our second case takes us to Doncaster Royal Infirmary in South Yorkshire, England. In the spring of 2015, the hospital's C ward, which specialized in elderly care, was experiencing an unusual problem. Over a 6-week period, 9 patients had died during the night shift. While deaths in an elderly care ward aren't uncommon, the clustering of these deaths troubled the hospital administration. Dr. Amelia Chen, the ward's senior physician, noticed a pattern. All 9 patients had died between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. All had shown signs of distress in their final hours, according to the limited notes from night staff. Several had called out or become agitated shortly before passing. "Something isn't right," Dr. Chen told the hospital director. 9 deaths in 6 weeks, all during the same time window? We need to investigate this. The hospital board initially suspected a problem with the night staff. Were medications being administered incorrectly? Was someone not responding quickly enough to patient needs? They reviewed procedures and interviewed staff, but found nothing wrong. That's when someone suggested installing additional surveillance cameras in the ward. They decided to install cameras in the common areas and nurses' station, focused on capturing staff movements and response times. Sarah Mitchell was one of the night shift nurses. A 34-year-old mother of 2, she'd been working at Doncaster Royal for 7 years. She was known for her compassion and dedication. She volunteered to wear a body camera during her shifts as part of the investigation. "I want to know what's happening just as much as anyone," Sarah told Dr. Chen. "These patients are under our care. If there's something we're missing, we need to find it." On April 23, 2015, Sarah began her shift at 10:00 p.m. The ward was quiet. 16 patients, most sleeping peacefully. Sarah made her rounds, checking vital signs, adjusting blankets, speaking softly to those who were awake. At 2:17 a.m., the call button in room 12 was pressed. Sarah checked her tablet. It was Mr. Arthur Thompson, an 83-year-old patient recovering from a stroke. Sarah walked quickly to his room, her body camera recording everything. Mr. Thompson was agitated, his eyes wide. "There's someone here," he said, his words slightly slurred from the stroke. "In the corner. Can't you see her?" Sarah looked around the room. Empty, except for Mr. Thompson in his bed. "There's no one here, Arthur. You're safe. Would you like me to turn on more lights?" No, he insisted, pointing to the far corner near the window. "She's right there. The woman in the old dress. She's just standing there, staring at me." Sarah stayed with Mr. Thompson for 20 minutes, calming him down. She made notes about the incident. Possible hallucination, likely due to medication or the after effects of his stroke. But over the next week, 3 more patients reported seeing a woman in their rooms during the night. All described her similarly. Middle-aged, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, standing silently in corners or at the foot of beds. Sarah discussed it with the other night staff. "Are we dealing with some kind of mass hallucination?" she wondered. "These are elderly patients with various conditions. Hallucinations aren't uncommon. But why are they all seeing the same thing?" On April 30th, tragedy struck again. Mrs. Dorothy Perkins, a 79-year-old patient, died at 2:43 a.m. Sarah had been with her when she passed. Mrs. Perkins had suddenly become distressed, pointing at something Sarah couldn't see, crying out, "Get her away from me! Please, make her go away!" Sarah had immediately called for assistance, but Mrs. Perkins' heart had given out within minutes. The death wasn't suspicious medically speaking. Mrs. Perkins had advanced heart disease, but the circumstances were deeply disturbing. The next day, the hospital's security team reviewed all footage from that night. They started with the corridor cameras, tracking Sarah's movements. Everything appeared normal. She'd responded quickly to Mrs. Perkins' call button. She'd done everything correctly. Then they reviewed Sarah's body camera footage. What they saw sent chills through everyone in the review room. At 2:41 a.m., Sarah entered Mrs. Perkins' room. The camera recorded everything from Sarah's perspective. Mrs. Perkins was in distress, pointing at the corner of the room. On the audio, her voice was clear. "Get her away from me." But here's what made everyone freeze. In the corner, just for a moment, the camera captured something Sarah hadn't seen. A translucent figure. A woman in what indeed looked like an old-fashioned nurse's uniform from perhaps the 1940s or 1950s. The figure was there for approximately 3 seconds before it seemed to dissolve into nothingness. "Pause it," the security director said. "Go back, frame by frame." They watched in slow motion. The figure appeared gradually, like someone slowly materializing. It stood motionless, seeming to watch Mrs. Perkins. Then it faded away just before Mrs. Perkins' final moment. When Sarah was shown the footage, she went pale. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I was right there. I was looking at that exact spot. There was nothing there." But the camera had seen what she couldn't, and it wasn't the only time. The security team began reviewing all surveillance footage from the previous 6 weeks, focusing on the times when the 10 patients had died. In 7 out of 10 cases, cameras had captured brief appearances of the same figure. Sometimes she appeared in patient rooms, sometimes in the corridor. Always during those early morning hours, always near patients who were about to die. A local historian, Thomas Webb, was brought in to research the hospital's history. What he discovered was both fascinating and chilling. The current hospital building had been constructed in 1970, but it stood on the grounds of what had been a smaller hospital dating back to 1902. More significantly, during World War II, the original building had served as a military hospital, treating wounded soldiers. Thomas found records of a nurse named Elizabeth Hardy who had worked at the hospital during the war. She was known for her tireless dedication, often working double shifts to care for the wounded. In 1943, during a German bombing raid, Elizabeth had refused to evacuate, staying with patients who were too ill to be moved. She died when a bomb hit the hospital, along with 12 patients. Elizabeth Hardy was a hero, Thomas explained. She gave her life for her patients. According to accounts from surviving staff, she'd made a promise. She would never abandon anyone under her care. The sightings continued sporadically over the following months. The hospital kept the footage confidential, concerned about public reaction. But staff members knew. Some requested transfers. Others, like Sarah Mitchell, stayed. "I've thought about leaving," Sarah admitted months later. "But I've also thought about what we're seeing. If that really is Elizabeth Hardy, she's not hurting anyone. Patients see her when they're dying. Maybe she's there to help them transition. Maybe she's keeping her promise." Statistical analysis showed something remarkable. After the surveillance cameras were installed and the presence was documented, patients who reported seeing the figure before dying appeared to pass more peacefully. Their final moments showed less distress according to medical monitors. Sarah eventually reviewed all the footage of the figure. "You know what strikes me," she said. "Her posture, the way she stands. It's watchful, protective, not threatening. I think the patients aren't scared of her necessarily. I think they're scared because they know what her presence means." Dr. Chen maintains a private log of all sightings. "Science can't explain this," she says, "at least not yet. But I've learned to accept that there are things beyond our current understanding. If Elizabeth Hardy is still caring for patients after all these years, then maybe death isn't quite the end we think it is." Story 3. The Stanley Hotel Elevator. Our final case takes us across the Atlantic to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Built in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, inventor of the Stanley Steamer automobile, this grand hotel is famous for inspiring Stephen King's novel, The Shining. But the Stanley Hotel's reputation for paranormal activity isn't just fiction. For over a century, guests and staff have reported unexplained phenomena. Phantom piano music from the empty ballroom, children's laughter in deserted corridors, doors opening and closing on their own. In 2016, the hotel underwent a major renovation that included upgrading its security system with state-of-the-art high-definition cameras throughout the building. What these cameras would capture would become some of the most compelling paranormal footage ever recorded. Michael Torres was the hotel's director of security. A former police officer with 20 years of law enforcement experience, Michael was a skeptic when it came to ghosts. "I'd heard all the stories," he said. "Guests claiming to see things, staff talking about strange experiences. I figured most of it was suggestion. People come to a hotel famous for being haunted. They want to see ghosts." The new camera system was impressive. 72 high-definition cameras covering every corridor, public space, and entrance. The system included night vision capability and motion-activated recording. "We installed these cameras for security," Michael explained, "to protect guests and property. I never imagined they'd document something that would challenge everything I believed about reality." On October 13, 2016, the hotel was at about 60% capacity. It was a Thursday night, quieter than the busy weekend periods. Michael was monitoring the cameras from the security office when he noticed something odd on camera 14, which covered the elevator bank on the 4th floor. At 11:47 p.m., the elevator door opened on the 4th floor. This wasn't unusual, except that no one had called the elevator. Michael watched as the door remained open for approximately 15 seconds, then closed. The elevator descended to the lobby, doors opened, remained open for several seconds, then closed again. Probably just a glitch, Michael thought. But then it happened again. And again. Over the next hour, the elevator made 7 trips between the 4th floor and the lobby, each time opening its doors to empty hallways. Michael reviewed the footage from multiple angles. The elevator camera showed the interior, completely empty every trip. The hallway cameras on the 4th floor and lobby showed no one approaching the elevator, no one calling it. But on one of the trips, something appeared on the footage that made Michael lean closer to his monitor. At 12:23 a.m., the elevator arrived on the 4th floor. The doors opened, and there, for just a moment, the camera showed a figure inside the elevator, a woman in an early 20th century dress, standing near the back of the elevator car. Michael blinked and rewound the footage. Yes, there she was, visible for perhaps 2 seconds before she seemed to simply disappear. The elevator doors closed with the car apparently empty again, though they'd just shown a passenger. Michael called his colleague Jennifer Rodriguez, who was doing rounds on the 3rd floor. "Jen, I need you to come look at something. Bring your body camera." When Jennifer arrived at the security office, Michael showed her the footage. "Tell me what you see." Jennifer watched in silence, then watched again. Is that a person? In old-fashioned clothing?" "That's what I see, too," Michael confirmed. "But here's the thing. There was nobody in that elevator. I was watching in real time. The car was empty. They decided to stake out the 4th floor elevator. If it activated again, they would be there to see it in person. They didn't have to wait long." At 1:15 a.m., the elevator chimed, indicating it had been called. Michael and Jennifer were standing in the 4th floor corridor, both wearing body cameras. They watched as the elevator rose from the lobby, the floor indicator lighting up. 1, 2, 3, 4. The doors opened. The elevator was empty. Michael stepped closer, peering inside. Nothing. Just an empty elevator car with its slightly worn carpet and polished brass fixtures. But their body cameras told a different story. When Michael reviewed the footage the next day, he saw what his eyes had missed. As the elevator doors opened, both cameras briefly captured the same figure. A woman in a long, high-necked dress typical of the 1910s or 1920s. She stood in the back corner of the elevator, her hands folded, her expression serene. She seemed to look directly at Michael, though he had seen nothing. The figure was visible for approximately 4 seconds across both camera feeds, then faded away like morning mist. News of the footage spread quickly through the hotel staff. Some were terrified, others were excited. The hotel's general manager, Patricia Blackwood, made a decision. They would release the footage. "The Stanley has never hidden from its supernatural reputation," she said. "If our cameras are capturing evidence of paranormal activity, the public has a right to see it." The footage went viral. Within days, paranormal investigation teams from across the country were requesting permission to investigate. The hotel was booked solid for months in advance. Over the following weeks, the elevator continued its mysterious journeys. Cameras captured the woman in period dress multiple times, always briefly, always in the elevator. Other cameras around the hotel began recording anomalies, figures in doorways, shadows moving contrary to light sources, orbs of light floating through empty rooms. But the elevator woman was the most frequent and most clearly visible manifestation. A paranormal research team from the Colorado Paranormal Society spent 3 nights investigating. Their equipment, including full-spectrum cameras and electromagnetic field detectors, captured numerous anomalies. The hotel's archivist, Emma Sullivan, began researching the hotel's history, looking for any connection to a woman who might match the figure in the footage. What she discovered was a tragic love story that had been largely forgotten. In 1911, just 2 years after the hotel opened, a young woman named Lucy Morrison had worked at the Stanley as a chambermaid. She was engaged to be married to a local ranch hand named William Garrett. According to newspaper accounts from the time, William was killed in an accident when his horse spooked and threw him down a ravine. Lucy was devastated. Co-workers reported that she had become withdrawn and despondent. On October 13, 1911, exactly 105 years before the first recorded appearance of the figure on camera, Lucy was found dead in her room on the hotel's 4th floor. The cause of death was listed as melancholia, though reading between the lines of Victorian-era reporting, it was likely suicide. The date alignment was striking. The first appearance had been on October 13, 2016, the anniversary of Lucy's death. Emma found photographs of hotel staff from 1911 in the archives. There was Lucy Morrison, standing with a group of chambermaids. The resemblance to the figure in the elevator footage was remarkable. The same high-necked dress, the same hairstyle, the same delicate features. "I believe what we're seeing is some kind of impression," Emma proposed. "Lucy Morrison died tragically in this hotel. She was young, in love, her whole life ahead of her. That kind of emotional trauma might leave an imprint on a place." The elevator continues to be a hotspot for paranormal activity at the Stanley Hotel. The hotel now offers ghost cam tours where visitors can view live feeds from the surveillance system and watch archived footage of the various captured anomalies. Michael Torres, once a skeptic, has become a believer. "I trust my eyes," he says, "but I've learned to trust technology more. These cameras don't have imaginations. They don't have expectations. They simply record what's there, and what's there, at least sometimes, is something we can't fully explain." Some visitors have reported seeing Lucy with their own eyes, not just on camera. They describe a feeling of profound sadness when she appears, as if her grief is palpable even across the decades. Others report the opposite, a sense of peace, as if Lucy has found some form of contentment in her eternal vigil. In 2018, something extraordinary happened. On October 13th, the anniversary of Lucy's death, the elevator made its usual mysterious journeys. But this time, multiple cameras captured not one, but two figures. Lucy was there, but she wasn't alone. A man in period clothing stood beside her. He appeared to take her hand. Emma Sullivan believes she knows who the second figure was. William Garrett, Lucy's fiancé, was buried in a small cemetery about 10 miles from here. What if, somehow, across all these years, they found each other again? The two figures have appeared together several times since, always on October 13th, always in the elevator. The footage shows them standing close, seeming to find comfort in each other's presence before fading away together. "If ghosts are real," Michael Torres says, "and I believe they are now, then maybe this is proof that love transcends death, that promises made can be kept even beyond the grave.